Exploration of Frantz Fanon and Hannah Arendt on violence. Arendt's critique and comparative perspectives. Frantz Fanon, 1925-1961, well-documented intellectual engagement in which Arendt critically analyzes Fanon's views on violence, particularly from his seminal work The Wretched of the Earth, 1961, and the broader scholarly comparisons between their positions. Arendt explicitly engages with Fanon in On Violence, often alongside Jean-Paul Sartre's preface to Fanon's book. Fanon's perspective on violence. In The Wretched of the Earth, Fanon analyzes colonial violence as a Manichaean system that dehumanizes the colonized, dividing the world into settler and native zones. Key elements include colonial violence as foundational. Colonialism is inherently violent, maintained through force, racism, and economic exploitation. Counter-violence as necessary and cathartic. The colonized must respond with violence to overthrow the system, reclaim agency, and restore humanity. Violence is described as a cleansing force that frees the individual from inferiority complexes and unites the people. Instrumental and creative aspects. Violence serves as a means for national liberation and the creation of a new humanity, though Fanon warns against unrestrained or spontaneous violence that can undermine the revolution. It is contextualized within the specific conditions of decolonization, e.g. Algeria. Fanon views violence pragmatically within the colonial context. It is a response to systemic brutality rather than an abstract glorification. Arendt's critique of Fanon in On Violence. Arendt engages Fanon primarily to counter what she sees as a dangerous romanticization of violence, influencing 1960s student movements. Her key criticisms include alleged glorification of violence. Arendt accuses Fanon and Sartre of treating violence as intrinsically creative or legitimizing, beyond mere instrumentality. She references passages suggesting violence binds people and creates new humanity, interpreting this as moving toward violence for its own sake. Instrumentality and rationality. Arendt insists violence is purely instrumental, a means that requires justification by clear, short-term ends and speech. It cannot create power or legitimate political orders. Prolonged or glorified violence risks unpredictability and the erosion of politics. Misreading of political consequences. Arendt argues that Fanon's confidence in violence to transform oppressors into liberators and found stable new societies is illusory. Violence destroys power, but cannot generate it. Post-violence orders risk new forms of domination or terror. Contextual critique. Arendt's response is shaped by her broader distinctions, power versus violence, and concerns over European student radicals invoking Fanon to justify campus violence. Scholars frequently note that Arendt may have misinterpreted or selectively read Fanon, influenced by Sartre's preface, projecting a more absolute glorification than Fanon's nuanced, context-specific analysis. Comparative analysis. Nature of violence. Fanon emphasizes its embodied, psychological, and liberatory effects in the colonial setting, including catharsis and identity reconstruction. Arendt views it as mute, instrumental, and anti-political, destructive of the public realm of speech and plurality. Power and politics. For Arendt, true power is collective and consensual. Violence signals its absence. Fanon sees revolutionary violence as a prerequisite for creating the conditions for genuine politics and nation-building in the colonized world. Justification. Arendt accepts limited, justifiable violence, e.g., self-defense or short-term necessity, but rejects its elevation to a creative or foundational political force. Fanon justifies it as a historical necessity against total colonial domination. Universality versus context. Arendt's framework is more universal and philosophical. Fanon's is grounded in the specificities of anti-colonial struggle. Scholarly assessments. Some defend Fanon against Arendt, arguing his work is a critique of colonial violence rather than its glorification, and that Arendt underestimates colonial realities. Others find value in both. Fanon illuminates the embodied and structural dimensions of oppression, while Arendt highlights the risks of violence undermining long-term political freedom. Critiques of Arendt include her relative abstraction from colonial contexts and potential Eurocentrism in applying her categories. Enduring relevance. The Arendt-Fanon exchange remains central to debates on decolonization, revolutionary violence, nonviolence, and political change. Fanon's ideas influenced anti-colonial movements, while Arendt's caution resonates in analyses of post-revolutionary stability and the limits of force. Their contrast highlights tensions between contextual necessity and universal principles in political theory. In summary, while direct critique from Fanon of Arendt is impossible due to chronology, Arendt's critique of Fanon in On Violence crystallizes fundamental differences in their philosophies. Scholarly literature continues to debate the fairness of her reading and the complementary insights each offers on power, liberation, and the role of violence in politics.